Tonight, the nation's capital up for statehood.
It's unconstitutional.
This as the voting rights bill heads to the Senate and negotiations continue on an infrastructure bill reaching into the trillions. And the state of abortion in the United States with the National Right to Life Convention set to kick off this week. Plus,
to pray in our schools.
Former President Trump speaks out.
They're being affronted on every single thing that they stand for and represent.
Warning evangelicals not to trust President Biden on key issues. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Democrats debate making D.C. the 51st state. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
Good evening. I'm John Jessup. The charge to transform the nation's capital into a sovereign state is advancing in the United States Congress, with the Senate now debating a House-passed bill that would dramatically alter the status of the District of Columbia as well as the rest of the nation.
For more on this, on its fate, we turn to CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, how much support does this bill have in the Senate?
Well, Jenna, right now, support for D.C. statehood is far short of the 60 votes needed to pass the Senate, and not all Democratic senators are behind it yet either.
Right now, proponents of this legislation don't even have 50 votes in the Senate for it to pass.
Zach Smith from the Heritage Foundation believes it's unconstitutional to change D.C.'s status through simple legislation.
Because the District of Columbia owes its existence to a separate constitutional provision, it's unique. No other state has been like it, and a constitutional amendment would be required to change its status.
With Democratic Senator Joe Manchin not on board yet, it's unlikely it moves through the Senate.
He has come out saying that he also believes a constitutional amendment is required.
Democrats argue it's time to give representation to the 700,000 people who live in D.C.
The country was founded on the principles of no taxation without representation and consent of the government. But D.C. residents are taxed without representation.
The House passed the bill twice in the last year, with Democrats arguing it's pivotal to their voting rights platform.
With no constitutional underpinning, the disenfranchisement of Washingtonians is a glaring civil rights and voting rights issue.
Statehood would give D.C. 2 new U.S. senators and voting power to D.C.'s representative. Republicans argued that's an unconstitutional power grab.
In 2020, 92.2% of D.C. votes went to the Democrat candidate. 5.4% went to the Republican candidate. In the last 8 elections, no Republican candidate has gotten more than 10% of the vote.
45 senators have signed on as co-sponsors of the D.C. statehood bill, and the White House has voiced strong support for the measure. Still, it does not seem likely that it will have the support to pass this Congress. John, Jenna.
All right, thank you, Abby. Well, joining us now, Jennifer Wishon, CBN News senior Washington correspondent. Jennifer, always great to see you. Jennifer, this legislation, unlikely to pass, but it is the first time it's gotten this far in the Senate. What does that signify to you?
Yeah, I mean, today's action is certainly significant because this has been debated literally for decades in this country. But what this signifies to me is that we're seeing the fruits of the last election. This has become a very partisan issue. And so proponents of this measure see a great opportunity. They see a Congress controlled by Democrats. They see a White House controlled by a president who's very eager to sign this into law. And they see this as their big chance. But as Abby just laid out, at least today, it's not going anywhere.
Reading the tea leaves here, Jennifer, does this tell you D.C. statehood is inevitable, or is this an issue that could possibly end up flipping Congress back to Republicans in the midterms?
Yeah, well, you know, I think the founders were very careful to lay out the U.S. Capitol. They wanted to create a space that was neutral ground to conduct the people's business. They didn't want a city or a state having undue influence over the federal government. And so, again, this has been debated off and on for many, many years. 40 plus years ago, Congress passed a constitutional amendment that was signed by President Carter that would have done much of what is being proposed today. It was not ratified by the states. And so not only are members of Congress kind of leery about upsetting that balance, if you look at polls, the American people are as well. And so, I think that because this has become a partisan issue, if you had Democrats in a supermajority in the Senate and they would control the House and the White House, I think this absolutely could pass. I think it would also be challenged in court immediately because of the many legal scholars who say, the Constitution is clear about Washington, D.C., and this can only be done with a constitutional amendment. Now, I do think that this issue is going to be used to motivate both sides. I think Republicans, they see this and they're concerned about it for no other reason than what Abby said. A Washington, D.C. state would be able to elect 2 U.S. senators. They absolutely would be members of the Democratic Party if you look at the makeup of the voters there. And this is what is going to motivate them to go to the polls to try to prevent issues like this, because they see a liberal agenda coming from the White House and they want to be able to stop it in the U.S. Senate.
All right, CBN senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon. Thanks, Jennifer.
Well, D.C. statehood isn't the only item on the Senate's agenda. Lawmakers are turning their focus to negotiating a deal on infrastructure in the wake of tonight's vote on election reform, which even before the vote was all but certain to fail.
For more now, let's bring in CBN News White House correspondent Eric Phillips. Eric, this election reform bill is a top priority for the White House.
It is a top priority, but let's be very clear. Republicans do not support this bill. This bill needs 60 votes in order for it to move forward with debate. The votes just aren't there, so it's not going to happen. That's despite the fact that Democrats, all 50 of them, have united around this to make it happen. And for them, that's kind of the win out of this, John and Jenna, the fact that Democrats were able to unite around this important issue. And really, that just happened this afternoon when Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia signed on and committed to voting yes to moving forward with debate.
Everyone's working in a real good. You've had President Obama come out. You've had basically Stacey Abrams. We're looking at a much more, I think, a much fairer, a much better approach to take.
And I think it's important to remember why we're at this point. State legislatures, as you referenced, across the country are passing a wave of anti-voter laws based on the same repeatedly disproven lies that led to an assault on our nation's capital.
And Senator Manchin revised the original For the People's Act to include some of the language that Republicans said they wanted. Still, not one single Republican supported this bill in order to get it to debate. And so right now it's just languishing. Another important piece of legislation that Senator Manchin is saying we could see come forward in terms of an agreed upon Republican-Democrat bill as soon as tomorrow could possibly be the infrastructure bill. Remember, this is a $2+ trillion proposal coming from the White House, and Republicans rebuffed it, saying it was too expensive. So there's been a lot of wrangling back and forth about how much this bill is going to cost and how it will be paid for. Some are saying, hey, let's just raise the gas tax. But that is something that the president has been staunchly against because it would violate his promise against raising taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. He wants the wealthy to step up and help pay for this.
The president is encouraged by the ongoing talks and discussions that are continuing with Democrats and Republicans. He's asked some members of his senior team, as you noted, Steve Ricchetti, Louisa Terrell, to go up to Capitol Hill and meet with a group of bipartisan senators. And once they conclude that meeting, I expect we'll assess what the next steps are.
And again, we'll be watching very closely because this could move very quickly from this point going forward. During today's briefing, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked what happens if during this process the infrastructure bill is watered down to the point where it does not include some of the very important points that the president said were essential elements of the bill. And she said, well, that's possibly where budget reconciliation could come in, a process that would allow Democrats to move forward with some of the president's bold ideas, even without Republican support. And I should point out that the whole issue of the filibuster that requires these 60 votes, that is something that Democrats could really, at this point, holding the majority, do away with. But just today, Senator Kyrsten Sinema said she doesn't think that's a good idea, that they may be in the majority now, but they may not always be in the majority, and it would probably suit them better to try to work within the confines of what they have than to do away with the filibuster, because they'll need it if, again, they find themselves in the minority. John and Jenna.
All right, White House correspondent Eric Phillips at the White House. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Well, here with us now is our very own CBN News chief political analyst, a very busy David Brody. David, with no Republican support, tonight's vote on the For the People Act was sure to fail. Still, Majority Leader Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer decided to bring it up for a vote, while progressives also say that voting rights is a top priority. David, why has this issue become so important among the Democratic base, eclipsing other issues like Dreamers and immigration and police reform?
Well, let's be clear. This has been a top priority for the last couple of Congresses with the Democrats. The issue now, or why it's taking center stage now, is because Democrats have control of both the House and the Senate and the White House as well. And when you have that, that's where progressives come in. That's where they say, hey, let's get this done now. Once again, what Eric Phillips just pointed out about the filibuster at the end of his live shot is a great point, because none of this is happening. H.R. 1, the For the People's vote, is not going to happen without the filibuster, as well as D.C. statehood, as we've talked about, as well as infrastructure. None of it will happen. You've got to have 50 votes to wipe all of that, basically have it all happen. It's just not going to happen without it. So that's where it is right now.
David, today West Virginia Senator and moderate Democrat Joe Manchin said Democrats need to move to a better compromise. This, though, after Democrats rallied around his voting rights bill. Is it possible for Democrats to get Republican support here on a voting rights bill? And what kind of concessions might they have to make?
Well, it's going to be a quick answer. No, they won't get any Republican votes. And no, there will be no concessions because they won't get any Republican votes. I mean, look, it's just that simple. The Republicans are dug in here on the Voting Rights Act. They're or the For the People's vote. They're just not going to do it. So it's going to die. And the only way that Democrats are going to be able to push it through will be through a filibuster. They'll have to change the filibuster. But Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema won't do it, and that leaves them, the Democrats, 2 votes shy.
All right, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, thanks for your insights.
You bet.
And coming up, the state of abortion in America, with the National Right to Life Convention set to kick off this week.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
And welcome back. A big pro-life event is getting ready to kick off in Virginia this week.
It's the 50th annual National Right to Life Convention, which opens with a Thursday night dinner and lasts through the weekend. This year's conference comes on the heels of the release of the 8th annual State of Abortion in the U.S. report from the NRLC. According to the report, since the Roe v. Wade decision legalizing abortion in 1973, more than 62 million abortions have taken place in the United States.
Well, here now, Melissa Oden, a pro-life speaker, writer, and advocate with the Abortion Survivors Network. She's also a survivor of an attempted abortion herself. Melissa, thank you so much for being here. Why don't we start right there with a little bit of your story. If I understand correctly, your mother was just 19 years old when she went in for an abortion. Melissa, can you tell us what happened and also why you believe abortion has an intergenerational impact?
Absolutely. I am one of those babies we hear argued about in our society, a child who survives a failed abortion. 43 years ago, my birth mother, Ruth, was forced to have a saline infusion abortion. That type of procedure involved injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid that should have been protecting me in the womb, but instead was meant to then poison and scald me to death. That procedure lasted 5 days for me, which was longer than typical because they couldn't successfully induce Ruth's labor. And so on the 5th day, when they finally did succeed, they believed that I would be born as a successful abortion, just delivered as a deceased child. And that's the day I was accidentally born alive.
Wow. Gosh, that's quite a story. It's horrific to hear that. So you testified in Congress Wednesday on at the behest of Senator Ted Cruz against the Women's Health Protection Act. Why is that bill so radical?
The bill is absolutely radical. Not only radical because it disregards the humanity of the unborn and any kind of protections for women. This was not about healthcare. This is about abortion and expanding Roe, not just protecting it. And, sadly, I think one of the most radical pieces for me that I want people to be aware of is that it would make it so that no state law could ever be passed that would restrict abortion. That's radical.
Melissa, recently, or historically rather, the Hyde Amendment received bipartisan support. President Biden himself supported the rider, the annual rider, which prohibited taxpayer funding of abortion in the federal budget. It wasn't long ago, though, that the Biden administration removed the Hyde Amendment from the budget. Melissa, what do you think's changed?
We haven't changed as the people. The will of the people hasn't changed. I think if you asked most people, no matter what they believed about abortion, they would say they don't want their taxpayer funds to go towards it. So we haven't changed, but this administration has. And I think we need to make it clear that our legislators need to hear from us that Hyde needs to be protected.
All right, Melissa Oden with the Abortion Survivors Network. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your amazing story with us. We're so glad you are here with us today, so we praise God for that. And thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
When we come back, former President Trump speaks exclusively to CBN's David Brody. See why he says the Biden White House is an affront to evangelical Christians.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Former President Donald Trump again making headlines saying the Biden administration is an affront to evangelicals, quote, on every single thing that they stand for and represent. John?
That is what he told CBN's chief political analyst in an exclusive interview. Mr. Trump also talked about the border and what he thinks about his Supreme Court appointments and the recent decision upholding Obamacare, along with his own political future. Take a listen.
He may not sit in the Oval Office anymore, but Donald Trump still packs a political punch. His supporters remain faithfully behind him and are hoping he'll make another run at the presidency.
What would have that impact on your decision? What's going through your mind on that? A lot of people want to know.
Well, I think I'm just looking at what's going on. I'm very unhappy with what's going on. I look at the border where people are coming in by the millions. It's going to be by the millions very soon. It already is. And I look at other things, how our country is really, it's America last. I was America first. I look at it and I see what's happening, and I'm not happy about it. So we'll make that decision, and I think people will be very happy with the decision I make.
Also in the 2024 conversation on the Republican side, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
There's a lot of people talking about Ron DeSantis and the job he's doing in Florida. What are your thoughts about DeSantis running in 2024? What do you think of that?
I think Ron's very good. I endorsed him, and when I endorsed him, he went up like a rocket ship. He understands that, and he's doing a good job. We have a number of people that are doing a very good job. Ron's a friend of mine. He's been great.
What hasn't been great in Trump's mind is a recent decision by two of the Supreme Court justices that he nominated. Both Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh voted to save Obamacare.
Disappointed, and that's the way it goes. Very disappointed. I fought very hard for them, but I was very disappointed with a number of their rulings.
Yeah. Does it make you second guess some of those picks, or time will tell?
No, second guessing does no good. But I was disappointed with a number of rulings that they made.
He's even more disappointed in what's happening at the southern border.
If you had a few minutes to speak with Kamala Harris about the immigration situation, what would you tell her? Because after all, Joe Biden put her in charge of the crisis. By the way, they don't even call it a crisis.
I'd say go back to what we were doing. It worked. Not so easy to get back there, however. I had to go through court cases, litigation. We had to win a lot. And stay in Mexico was a very big deal. And we got that, and we got all the other things, and now it's all been blown up. And you have millions of people coming into our country, just in case you're not aware of it. Millions of people. And many of those people come out of prisons. They allow them to come out of prisons and other places. What's happening on our border is beyond a crisis. And maybe they won't call it a crisis, but it's beyond a crisis.
During his re-election campaign, Trump warned voters that a President Biden would make major changes on the immigration front. He also warned evangelicals to not trust Biden when it came to key cultural issues.
They're being affronted on every single thing that they stand for and represent. When Biden went in, he didn't say all of the things that were happening. You look at religion, generally speaking, what's going on now with this administration, this was not what was discussed during debates and during anything else. I mean, nobody ever thought this was possible, not only on religion, on the border, on Second Amendment, on everything else you can think of, but including God and including life and including many other topics. This was never Nobody ever thought this is a Bernie Sanders times 10. Nobody ever thought what's happening to our country could be happening to our country. And the evangelicals and Christians generally, you take a look at what's happening, Christians generally are feeling that way, and they're feeling that way very strongly. Much more so now, because now they're actually seeing things happen.
Indeed, conservative Christians have deep concerns about the direction of the country. The question now remains as to what impact Donald Trump will have in the upcoming elections, both next year and 2024. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, the SpaceX Dragon is delivering dozens of new experiments to space. Take a look at what's on board this mission.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to cbn.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
And finally tonight, the International Space Station is a science lab like no other. The most recent SpaceX launch delivered some fascinating experiments.
Yeah, things like water bears, cotton, and dozens of baby squid from Hawaii were among the precious cargo. The newly hatched squid will help scientists solve health problems that astronauts face on long space missions. These resupply missions help researchers make life better in space and on Earth. And I had to look up what a water bear was, John. It's some sort of moss particle.
Who would have thunk it? So nothing like your high school science projects.
No, this is a whole nother level.
Well, I'm interested in seeing what they find out with all these experiments.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you so much for watching Faith Nation.